Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Rollin Dice Show. As you've already heard, we've got a couple of guests on today. The first being Mr. Tom Ryan. Hello, Tom.
Hello. Sorry, I thought you were going to start again.
No, we've launched into it. And as a special guest, my mortal nemesis, Jimmy Dance.
Yellow.
Hi, Jimmy. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm waiting to hear, what hatchet job gets done in the edit this time.
And as ever, I'm joined by the wonderful Mr. Richard Smith.
That's me. I'm pretty wonderful.
And that's the last compliment I pay him on air. So, hello.
I could change my my top tweet to Andy Jones says, I'm the wonderful.
Oh, good times. Hello, listener. We are going to talk about a game we've been playing quite recently.
This has not gone well.
This has gone as perfect as I could hope for, which is the Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars RPG.
Yep.
Correct.
Perfect.
Specifically Edge of the Empire.
Specifically Edge of the Empire, which we played when it first came out. Well, me and Richard did, and then we've played it again now with Tom and Jimmy.
Yep.
And we and since then we got into the very old D20 Star Wars RPG, so we've got sort of a nice reference point to go back to. So far we've just done the beginner box, and we've just managed to acquire a ship. We won't spoil that story if you've not played it yet, but it's going quite well. And Rich, you're DMing for the first time.
I am. Yeah. Previously when we played, you DM'd, and it was Mr. Cito, myself, and perhaps Catherine, I think.
Yeah.
As the players, and yeah, this is the first time I've GM'd anything, and it's
Exciting, wonderful.
I'm really enjoying it, but it's a lot harder than I'd
Tiring.
actually figured.
Yeah.
I've got a lot more respect for the work that Tom put into RPGs that we've done in the past.
That's right. I mostly spent about 40 hours creating a base, like a physical ship made out of foam board, and then was like, oh, this is a podcast.
That was amazing.
Yeah, and we used it once, and then we never even got that as a ship, so it just never...
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, kind of what one of the big things in this system is obviously it's Fantasy Flight, so they've produced their own custom dice that you don't need to use.
Yeah, they don't make no sense.
There are conversion charts so that you can use other dice, but
That would sound painful.
ain't nobody got
Yeah,
time for that.
Converting
it's really
them to
annoying,
what
so...
they are supposed to be, and then working out the result from that.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
seems-
But yeah, basically at the end of this, you end up with a bunch of results which will have some successes, some fails, some
Advantages?
advantages, and some threats, and
And-
potentially some
Triumphs.
and
Failures?
Yeah, it's not called that, but they're called despairs.
despairs. That's it.
Yeah.
And basically, a success and a fail, what you expect. You either hit or you don't hit. The advantages and threats are basically, they don't influence whether or not you succeed or fail, but they give an advantage or a disadvantage based on what you do. So you might, let's say you're trying to shoot a guy. So you're shooting a guy, you're on an advantage as well. So you hit, like, that means that you hit him, and also maybe it knocks him off balance, so it's going to take an extra action for him when he's firing back at you. But the threat would be something like, oh, you hit him, but then you run out of ammo, so you're going to have to spend...
Running out of ammo would actually... I think you need at least 2 threats.
Yes. Yeah, but just to give it...
Mr. Rulebook over here.
well, yeah.
It would be like, I guess like a weapon jam kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, or
maybe there's a banana peel on the floor and you accidentally slip on it.
you could do that.
Which is fine. Like, you can kind of make those things work in combat. But when you get into conversations, or I'm trying to break through this lock, they're really difficult to think of what they can be.
Yeah.
Which is good. Like, it helps with this storyline. I think whilst we were playing, you guys were all quite keen to chip in what you would like those things to be.
Yeah.
And I think that is an important part of the system. Is it's about player engagement. Like it's not just putting all of this on the DM to
I think
be able to, it would just kill them. Like, they would just. I mean, even the best DMs in the world would be like, how am I supposed to think of all these advantages and keep it balanced? Whereas if the players are throwing like, oh, what if this happened? Then you as a DM could be like, okay, that could work, or I'll allow that. That's cool. And also like the advantages and threats don't necessarily have to be system based. Like you can just kind of do things kind of for narrative.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice in that regard. Like you can add a bit more role playing into it in that sense. So
and I'm still two minds about whether there's too much of this advantage and disadvantage stuff going on, but it adds that extra flavour that you don't get in other RPGs, it does help contribute to a much more just a much more detailed story than you aim, you hit,
exactly.
they die, you aim, you
Well,
hit,
I think
they die.
especially because as we were playing it, you guys were chipping in what you wanted those to be. If I'd just been sat there saying, no, I'm going to tell you what these things are, that would be, it would remove you from it in a big way. But because you're actively engaging, like, oh yeah, I shoot at him, and then I've rolled an advantage, so maybe this means that this happens. Then you're creating the story as you go along.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of how we did it when we first played. I think because none of you guys had played RPGs before, and I wasn't that great of a GM. I sort of told you what everything meant. Having it a lot more open, I think makes it a much more enjoyable game.
Yeah.
Jimmy, this is
Yellow.
This is your second RPG now, after the Star Wars.
Yeah.
Both
21.
RPGs. Yeah.
What do you like and what do you dislike about this one compared to the old one?
I like the mechanics with the dice. I just don't like the symbols. Like a couple of us bought the app, and it's still.
We all.
We played it for a few hours.
The words advantages. Like I wish you could just do it as a list thing, so it just sort of said like because you can. The app's really good in that it can crunch the numbers for you and just tell you like, oh, you have 3 of these symbols left and 2 of these symbols left, because that's the other thing is symbols cancel each other out. But I wish it just said instead of saying 3 like star pointy explosion things, it just said 3 successes. I'm like, oh great, okay.
And I mean that will come from once we've been a bit more familiar with it. But it's certainly just
we played for
just to get going.
2-3 hours. I still can't work out the symbols yet, which is annoying. I'm like, no, did I do good? Yay.
Our last petition to FFG was about the Valley, and that's still not been responded to, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to influence the app.
There definitely should be a follow-up petition, like Dear FFG 2.
But yeah, I mean, we played through the beginner box, which, like we said, we played through probably with sufficient time for Andy to forget all of the key points.
Yeah, I sort of knew what was going on, but I was just enjoying.
Yeah, it took a little bit of a back.
I was failing every dice roll anyway, so I wasn't even.
Oh, that's true.
helping.
Yeah, your character is the most useless.
Just terrible, absolutely terrible.
But yeah, like it was. We were doing that with, as you're saying, your own characters, which was actually made a few bits for me a little bit harder because it's obviously like basically these characters are streamlined to get through this thing. Yeah. But it all worked. You guys had taken some extra what's it called? Obligation points, which are basically that they're meant as kind of narrative aids. Basically, the more obligation you have within certain types of obligation, which might be, you owe this guy some money. Let's say you owe him £10,000 or 10,000 credits, as it would be. So you have 10 points of obligation to him. Basically, each one of those points is going to be 1,000. And that means that at the start of each thing, we would roll a dice and see if it triggers any of your obligations, and then something from that obligation would turn up in the scenario, which is quite cool. Yeah. I don't really see how that's a massive disadvantage, but we'll find out later on down the line.
I mean, the reason it's a disadvantage is technically in the rule set, you roll each session to see whether an obligation is going to come up.
Yep.
And if your obligation if a PC obligation does come up, everyone suffers strain damage for that session.
Right.
So everybody's already at minus. the person whose obligation is rolled actually has double that minus. So I think it's the standard thing is -1 for the whole party and then -2 for the person who's obligation.
Okay.
And then if the obligation dice that you roll, the D100, if that's double numbers, so say 66, if that was your obligation, the effect is doubled. So everyone in the party gets -2 stress or -2 strain, and then the person who was gets -4. So it's really negative in that regard. I think it's actually better just as another DM tool. It's quite good because that is a hard thing to think about as a DM when if you're already creating a campaign, or even if you're going off of a pre-written campaign.
Yeah,
it's hard to then bring the player stories back into it. Whereas this kind of just says, oh, maybe this week something about this obligation triggered. So you might be like, oh yeah, so maybe I just write in like, oh, this bounty hunter appears, and yeah, like it's a really nice tool, I think, for the DM, if not even for the players. Yeah.
Well, as we've got 75 out of 100 in obligation now, you'll probably be seeing a lot of it, Richard.
Yeah. But that's why we're kind of going off a house rule that I suggested that I'd seen other people had done, where you just kind of roll through a story arc. So you go for higher obligation because you kind of want one of the obligations to come up because you want it to appear in the story arc at some point.
Yeah.
But it just means you get a bit more spend, and you're not always at the minus, because that penalty could be really like detrimental to a play session, especially if you roll doubles. Like having -4 would really suck.
Yeah, your strain, I don't think.
Given that I think we ended last session, I think I ended on 1 health.
Yeah, your strain is basically how long before you get knocked out. So when you become exhausted, your character's downed. So it's like a kind of almost secondary health bar that will take you out of the game as much as your actual health bar will do.
Yeah.
So 4 points off that, especially in the early game when you don't have an awful lot of it, is kind of a big deal.
But you can recover it through advantages as well, which we weren't doing.
Yeah.
Which we all I'm going to do from now on.
Because you suffered so much. Like,
but likewise, you can take strain through threats.
Yeah.
And
I forgot you can also, you can take strain from aiming and things like that. Like you can actually
do an extra maneuver.
Yeah, you can choose to take strain.
Yeah, it's quite a sophisticated system actually.
Yeah, the rule book pretty much says you can do whatever you want to do. Here's some things that you might want to do if you're going to do it.
Yeah, one of the things I was quite impressed by was the fluidity of a lot of things in the rulebook as well. Like it's particularly on characters. It says that this is a game about having fun. If there's ever anything that means that somebody's not having fun, change it.
Yeah,
like just make it work for your group. Make it easier for yourself if that's what you need to do. Make it easier for the players if that's what you need to do. Like if a player doesn't like their character, just let them change their character and kind of stick at more or less the same power level that they are. Like you were saying, with you guys spending the obligation at the start means that you can tool up your characters a bit more, so you're already more invested in the characters. Whereas something like D&D, you don't really get to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that mean we can change the dice? I can do little pictures. So like disadvantages, Admiral Akbar. Success.
Is that better or worse?
Yeah, because at least I'll know what's going on. I'm like, 2 Darth Vaders and a Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm not coming off well.
Amazing.
If you want to do that, we can get that done.
All right, cool.
Definitely get that
Just done. Like stormtroopers and I don't know. Yeah.
Cool.
So
I feel like you would get that done, and then you'd roll it and be like, what do stormtroopers do?
But yeah, we're playing the Edge of the Empire beginner, and from there we're going into the free scenario that was put up on the website. It follows directly on, and then I'm gonna probably
spoilers.
Well, you guys. Then I'm going to work in the scenario that they put up, which is also a beginner scenario. So you could download that for free and just try it out. Which was put up for the free RPG day a few years ago. Which is a cool kind of heist scenario. So there's plenty of avenues to try this out. I would recommend one of the beginner games because you don't have to spend an awful lot of time as the GM learning it. It does kind of detail things as they come up. And it's free, or at least relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
The core book is fairly expensive.
Yeah, that's the only downside, is that it's high production value, but that comes at a reasonably high cost compared to, for instance, you can get starter sets. Like the starter set for D&D is ridiculously good value.
Yeah, like 20
like for the 5th edition, right? You get the whole box, including the pre-gen characters.
I mean, the beginner box you got, I think, is 25, 30.
Yeah, okay, that's not bad.
Which isn't terrible, and that gives you all the dice. So it's perhaps worth getting for that and just the intro. And it does have a kind of reduced version of the rules, so you could get going with that. But the rule book itself, I think, is RRP 30, but it's on Amazon at the moment for £40 and seems to be out of stock everywhere.
Yeah.
On the website, both the Edge of the Empire and the second one, the
Age of Rebellion.
They're both out of stock.
But that's one thing that's quite interesting. It's one RPG system that's split into 3 based on where you want to set it. So the Edge of the Empire is kind of the fringe stuff, so that means you're dealing with much more like the scum and villainy side of it. So you're dealing with smugglers. The Hutts, smugglers, and that whole side, which is quite cool because it means that you can get really invested in the world of Star Wars without having to deal with the Force.
Yeah, I think they were very intentional in that the third one, so the last one that came out was the Force one, and before that, you can potentially have Force-sensitive characters, but they explicitly say, hey, this guy's not Jedi. He's not going to be doing cool stuff. Here's some very, very basic Force powers you can use, and here's how you do it, but you won't be playing the Jedi.
Yeah.
So don't go into it being like, oh, yeah, I'm basically the guy from Force Unleashed. Like, I can bring down a Star Destroyer from the atmosphere. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You'll be very much struggling with the Pebble.
Which is cool because I think the whole thing about being an RPG and the character progression. If you're a Jedi, like how much is your character really going to progress? Like you're going to have to start off with some kick-ass powers, otherwise you're not going to feel like a Jedi. Whereas with this, like there's still some really cool stuff you can do. Like your characters can do some crazy things, especially because you're all different, very non-human races.
Yeah.
But you just don't have to deal with.
That was what I didn't like about the D20 one. Actually, is that we had two Jedi players. One of them was ridiculously underpowered. That was yours, Andy.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have a lightsaber.
Yeah.
And like all melee weapons in that game suck if they're not lightsabers. And then the other one just had all Force powers and was ridiculously overpowered. Like Catherine's character could just, I mean, she brought down like a mountain on someone pretty much.
Yeah. No, she placed it because she didn't want to hurt them.
That's right. Yeah.
I gave her a lot of stick for that.
Yep. Yeah, like it was kind of weird in that regard, and I think that is something a lot of Star Wars things suffer with, is that because Jedi are the cool thing to be, people always want to play them. And as a result, they kind of put all of the other classes on the back pedal because they're kind of like, who's going to want to just fire a blaster if the person either side of them is,
dual wielding lightsabers.
Yeah, exactly. But then this is what Fantasy Flight's kind of handled quite well by basically just saying, get a blaster. You'll be lucky if you get a heavy blaster.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and they've made those weapons seem cool, and the advantages and the threats really work in the favour of that, because it means that you can. I know we were kind of bad mouthing those earlier, but it means that you fired your blaster and you got 2 advantages. So maybe you rolled a miss, but you got 2 advantages. So maybe your blaster bolt hits something in the environment, which causes something to happen.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's not a lightsaber and you're not slicing through fools, but you've still got this cool thing.
Yeah.
And it just helps balance it and keep everything a bit more interesting.
Yeah, so you're still doing cool stuff without having your dual lightsabers.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's the Edge of the Empire, which we're playing. There's then the Age of Rebellion, which is, like it sounds, you're kind of drafted into that side of it.
Forces,
so you're going to be Rebel Forces. You're going to be piloting X-Wings and... just doing cool stuff like that.
And we're not playing that? All right.
Well, we might be. Yeah, you never know.
And then there's the Force and Destiny, which is I'm not entirely sure whereabouts it's set, but that's all about getting your Force powers and becoming Jedi or Sith.
I think again it might be back in the Fringe or like Outer Rim, maybe.
I think
because I think it's kind of where the Jedi Exiles are. I'm guessing. I haven't properly read it, but that would make sense. It's going to be the less inhabited worlds because it's going to be where they hide.
But all of these are set between the destruction of the first Death Star and the Battle of Hoth. So that's quite a long period. But it means that it's happening during those original 3 films. And like I said, all of these 3 things work in tandem. So if all of a sudden one of you decided that you wanted to be a Jedi, you could have a conversation with me and we could go and say, okay, well, we need to start looking at this. And, maybe a mission takes you up near this stuff. And then we can start working on that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And, on the flip side, hey, maybe all 3 of you want to join the Rebel forces.
I was going to say, yeah.
And get an X-Wing each. Like, that's the thing that we can do.
Jimmy's eyes lighted up.
Yeah, maybe at some point someone meets their hero.
Yeah, I need to bump into old Admiral.
Turns out it's not a trap.
Which is, it's really cool. Especially because we are all Star Wars fans, and if we weren't Star Wars fans, we probably wouldn't be playing this. Like, it's a good enough system, but I think you need to have enough investment in the universe to really get stuff out of it. But because we can kind of really delve into it and enjoy that side of it. And enjoy going and meeting our heroes, Maybe we can meet people like Akbar or,
That's all Jimmy said for.
Yeah, that's it.
When's my appointment with Admiral Akbar?
I believe I had an appointment.
but we have a good knowledge of that universe, so we can really kind of sink our teeth into it and kind of put our feelers out and see what we want to try out. And the system allows for that, which is great.
Yeah, brilliant. So we're all having fun. Talking of fun games, Jimmy's just got a brand new game.
Yeah.
Which we've not played yet, but Jimmy, talk us about this game and why you bought it.
It was Star Wars. Star Wars Rebellion, the big Fantasy Flight mega game that is a miniatures game, because apparently board game rights mean that they're not allowed to call it a board game.
Yeah, Fantasy Flight do not have the rights for Star Wars board games, but they can put out games with a board, so long as there's some miniatures in there.
The problem with this is people that love miniatures have thought they were buying like X-Wing miniatures or just Star Wars collectors are like, oh my god, there's a box that for whatever it was, £65, £60. Oh, you get 150 Star Wars toys. So they've all bought it, which means people that want to play the game are now going, can I play that Star Wars board game? Like, no.
Yeah. And it's expensive to start
and the people
off
that bought it for miniatures, I don't think are going to be super happy. Compared to what the other sets have had for Fantasy Flight.
Like, the minis are cool, but they are
they're
minis.
They're pieces for a board game, not like there's no acrylic snazzy bases.
Exactly.
It's functional, which is cool, but people might be getting angry about that on both sides.
Yeah, to give an idea of the quality, if you've played Star Wars Armada, the X-Wings and the TIE Fighters are the same X-Wings and TIE Fighters that you find in the squadrons. Yeah. And that quality is applied throughout. So do not expect that lovely, beautiful Imperial Star Destroyer that you get in Imperial Assault, because it is a much smaller model. Yeah. It's purely representative. They still look cool, and they look exactly like you would expect them to be. They're done to a pretty good high quality.
You've got the snow speeders, which haven't been in any other Fantasy Flight thing yet, so I'm in.
But they are just pieces. I mean, like you said, they're pieces for a board game. They're not miniatures, as much as
they
have to say they're miniatures. They are not.
You look forward to being the Majestic Empire or the Rebel Scum?
I'm going to be the Rebel player. It seems cool, hiding a base.
Have you not learned anything from Fantasy Flight games?
Oh yeah, it means I'm screwed.
Always play the Empire.
The main mechanic of that hide and seek game of Imperial players trying to find where you've hidden your base on this tiled board where you can pick any planet, like, that's cool. Just mind games. And then because it's in that Star Wars world, there's that whole push of you can put your base on Hoth, but then like the Imperial player, and then play on that. Like, who would be dumb enough to put their base there? Or obviously for the Empire, they can blow up Dagobah. It's like you can't go meet Yoda because instead of Alderaan, the Death Star blew up that planet instead. So there's a few bits where you can mess around, and it's got more value or fan service that way. Like if you're into Star Wars, that sort of thing adds 2 extra points to its score. But you hate it, Andy.
And there's...
Why?
Just before we go into that, there is also generals, isn't there? So you can sort of
so you have your little characters that
you can place different generals and different
they all have
locations
different buffs and things they have to go do. And
Yeah, you've got like Mon Mothma and Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader and Yoda. People like that. People that you know from the films.
Yeah. It seems cool.
yeah, you take it in turns and play them one by one. So it's all like counter picking or pretending you're going to send Princess Leia, but then if they've got Palpatine left to play, you're trying to bait them into putting him somewhere else. So it looks interesting.
Cool.
There's like kind of 3 games in one, I guess. Is sort of how it works. There's a few different things at play.
Yeah, there's the kind of general expansion, but then you're also playing mission cards.
The general
that you're
thing,
trying to
there's
accomplish.
the really obvious just find the base game which is going on, hide and seek, and then your little strategic kind of army game where you're putting your troops and then doing mini combat sessions.
Which sounds cool, but
here's a counterpoint.
and I don't hate it. I'm not that interested in it. I've got the card game. I've got the RPG. That's enough Star Wars for me.
Just the 2.
Doesn't even mention Imperial Assault.
Yeah, Imperial Assault, Armada, X-Wing miniatures.
When was the last time you played the card game, Mr. Jones?
Strong point.
Was it in 2016?
It was not, no. But then, but if I'm gonna play, I'd prefer to play the card game and try that again.
Is the card game still getting boosters in the same way?
Yeah, it's
So have they gone into
I'm really
Force
behind.
Awakens yet?
No.
No.
No, I think they are doing some Rebel stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, I imagine it would.
The board games are always really far behind. Look at the Marvel Legendary stuff.
Yeah,
they've still not really caught up with the films. Like they released the Guardians of the Galaxy pack, I think, this year.
No, that was last year.
They
But I
have
don't
got,
think they've done. I don't know if they've got any more plans.
They've got the next set, which is Civil War, coming out, but then it's like the comic Civil War, not the films.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is that Civil War 1 or Civil War 2? Because that's what's currently going on in the comics.
Civil War 1.
It's
Yeah.
Civil War 2.
In
Yes.
in the comics.
Yeah, Captain Marvel versus Iron Man.
Well, I've got some catching up to do. Cool. So I think we're gonna play. You guys are definitely gonna play that in the next.
You've refused to play it.
2 weeks.
Yeah,
so we'll come back to that in the next
Yeah,
podcast.
That plays 2 or 4, really.
This is something that I don't get. I can see 3 working because as the Empire, there's more like you can talk. But as the Rebels, I just can't see how. If I'm standing next to Tom, where I think we should put the base over here, Tom.
No,
And then
we've got to text to each
opposite.
other.
True, you can text, but it's very
Yeah,
of the 2 sides. Empire, I think, is cool because you're very.
Yeah.
You can be a lot more open.
It would make sense
We're going to
that you
blow
could
that
send-
up, and then you watch the person opposite you crying, as you know they've got their base. Whereas the Rebel players, I think it's a bit harder as a 2v2 thing to do without being like, "Can you not look for a second?"
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a really good representation of the kind of how those 2 factions would be feeling, because, like you say, the Rebels need to be quite discreet.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas the Imperials can just be like, yeah, we're a motherfucking...
Trundling around.
We are...
Yeah, I quite like the idea of the Rebels having to pass notes so that the Imperials don't know what they're doing. Like, just like a...
But, I mean, it's a board game with miniatures, so I'm in the same way. All of these
and
things.
it's a miniature
that have
game with a board.
licenses.
and it's Star Wars, and it's based within the original 3. Basically, that game plays across the original 3 films, and you are gonna change how those things happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Where
all timeline.
where the Rebel base is. Like maybe that whole thing that happened on Hoth actually happens on somewhere like Naboo. Maybe Naboo just gets destroyed by the Death Star because everybody wants to forget about that. Like that.
What Gungans?
That planet is definitely there for that
Misa,
reason
no,
alone.
know what you're talking about.
Which planet do we have? Yeah, make sure you can kill Jar Jar.
But yeah, I mean, like you say, I really like the idea of having to make a base at the start of the game and stick with it. And as the game goes on, that base gets less and less hidden.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that the Imperial player is going to find it right off the bat. That actually, if you play your cards right and you try and show some strength somewhere else because you're trying to hide or maybe respond to how the Imperial player is moving in a certain direction to draw them away from where your base is, that whole thing seems really cool, and I'm really excited to try that all out.
Yeah, so it's been a very Star Wars focused podcast.
It has.
I hope you enjoy Star Wars, otherwise this was a bit of a bore for you. Don't worry, we're still totally into other games. In fact, we will be hosting a Game of Thrones LCG 2nd edition tournament at Loading Bar in Stratford.
This is news to me.
Yeah, there'll be details by the time this podcast comes. Cheers, Jimmy. Thanks for backing us up there. There's the video on our YouTube channel, which will link to the event page on Facebook. Don't worry, Jimmy. We will sort this out.
Done that as well?
If you're interested in that, there will be a link in the show description, but also you can just tweet at us.
Yeah, wasn't Andy saying no one would beat him? He was offering cash bribes. It was like £50 if anyone can take him down.
Can't be done.
Sure, potentially that may not happen.
Game of Thrones have bounties in it. I'll put a bounty on his head that you bring me the crush deck of Andy Jones. I'll reward you handsomely.
And of course, you can see our Game of Thrones playthrough videos on the channel as well. But for this podcast, I'd like to thank our guests, Mr. Tom Ryan.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Jimmy Dance.
Thank you.
Of Loading Bar.
The birthday boy, Tom Ryan.
The birthday boy. Tom, if people want to wish you a happy birthday, even though it's a few days late, where can they find you on Twitter?
At TRyanArt.
Lovely. Jimmy, if people want to come to Loading Bar Dalston or Loading Bar Stratford and want to ask you a question about it, where can they tweet you?
At Drink Relax Play. Or the new website.
Which is
loadingonline.co.uk.
Nice.
Perfect. And as ever, you can find Richard at
RDS Rich.
myself at RDS Jonesy.
And the website at RollinDiceShow.com. And on Twitter at Rollin Dice Show.
Yes, so thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great couple of weeks. And until the next podcast, definitely play more games. Or keep rolling dice, but I don't want to start.
TM.
So instead of saying our crappy catchphrase, you want to steal Will Wheaton's crappy catchphrase.
Bye.
Bye-bye.